Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chris with Head2Head. Was reaching out to everyone this afternoon. I want to introduce our fantastic guest here, Mr. Adam Braatz, the founder of postmilitarypro.com. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, sir. Loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Oh, right on.
How's everything going? You're out in the Milwaukee area?
I am. Yep, you bet. Right northwest of Milwaukee right now. Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have one of my old my client one of my previous clients is out there. Her name is Miss Jane. She's a fantastic lady out in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. I don't know if you ever heard of a company called Reality Works.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
But they're out your way, yeah. So she's a sweetheart though. And I know she listens to this podcast, so I give her a nice plug when I can, Miss Jane Peters out there at Reality Works. But I appreciate you coming on our show. And, the reason why I, reached out to you is I really appreciate the things that you're doing for our veterans, especially in transitioning from, a career or, a couple of tours with the military and then kind of coming into the civilian life. How'd you get started with that?
Well, I really just kind of built the post-military professional from the ground up, and it came from me kind of recognizing even before I got out of there being a need for information, and not just information, but correct information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Sure,
and
sure.
and additionally, information that is as variable as people's circumstances are. And by that I mean everybody's experiences are going to be different, and
Absolutely.
some advice applies to some veterans, some advice doesn't apply to others, and at the end of the day, the onus is on the veteran to understand the resources and benefits that are available to them. But a lot of the time they don't really know where to start, because there's almost too many things out there. And even before I got out, I heard a lot of veterans say, I wish I would have known blank. And so my goal was to create a place where I could write articles that would answer that question about a variety of things. Answer the question to I wish I would have known in a fashion like I was explaining earlier, that's accurate, but also a little flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was one of those veterans that as soon as I got handed my, I'm out of here, I'm not re-enlisting. They set me up with a moving company to get all my belongings off the base and my
Right.
next endeavor, which, I was absolutely appreciative, especially being young, with, starting a family. But, and that was it. There was no resources. And up until about 2 years ago, and I've been out about 11 years now, up until about 2 years ago, before I really started listening and actually asking the question, outside of what else there is, I had no guidance either. So I really do
Right.
appreciate, the things that you're doing as resource for the transition and military veteran.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's still a fledgling endeavor. I just launched the site in April, but I have for a longer period of time kind of tried to advise people kind of on a more personal basis, and connect people with the things that I think may be valuable resources to them. Or the, like, no joke, you have to know this. You have to read your federal benefits guidebook that is published for free and online, and here's where you get it, and read it cover to cover 4 times, and that sort of thing. So it was that sort of thing that really got me to get off my butt and really just launch the site finally. I was going to wait until January 1st, 2019, but it was like, man, I can't wait anymore. I got too much to say. So
Sure. No, absolutely. And then why wait? Because that's resources from, you said, April till January when you thought about it. I mean, that's resources for people like myself that's read through a lot of your stuff in the last couple of weeks.
oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, I mean, I really love the Military Inc. Article you talked
Oh
about.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I really did like that because it resonates with me because I was that jarhead that had to get a tattoo right out of boot camp, and I really did, and I made a compulsive, and I don't regret it by any stretch of imagination, but I did make a compulsive, um, a decision there, not thinking of what could be ramifications trying to get a job.
Right. Oh, I was the same way. I was absolutely the same way.
Now you were a staff sergeant, is that correct? You did some instructing down there at Lackland as well, and
I was, yeah. So I was active duty for just under 8 years. When I left, I was a staff sergeant, which, not to confuse, in the Air Force, a staff sergeant is E5. So I was but a lowly entry level NCO, so to speak. But I was a military training instructor down at Lackland. So Air Force enlisted basic training.
fantastic. No, that was great. Now, did you find yourself drawn as you're drawn to helping veterans? That kind of like a calling for you to help in the instructor role as an educator type role?
You know, it's interesting how that came about. So I was deployed in my first enlistment. I was working under the greater wing of Air Force Public Affairs. I was actually, when I started, believe it or not, I was in the Air Force band.
Okay.
My undergraduate education having been in music. So an Air Force bandsman deploy. Some people think that the Air Force bands are just some frivolous waste of taxpayer dollars, but no, we deploy and we have, well, I say we, I'm not in it anymore, but the Air Force bands and the military bands do have a very real strategic value in the non-kinetic weaponry category, in the public relations and public affairs category, that I was able to witness firsthand when I was deployed. We played at embassies, we played for a room full of Kyrgyzstani army officers, and kind of softened some heightened tensions there. And we played for troops downrange in places where the USO couldn't or wouldn't reach, folks that, I would argue deserved a taste of home just as much, if not more, than other folks that are downrange. So I was deployed, and at that time, this is kind of a long story, if that's okay.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So we were downrange, and I was having just the crummiest deployment because I was about a month and a half into it, and I finally got, I had been blessed with an opportunity to check my email. So I had checked my email, and a buddy of mine, staff sergeant, back home, that he was looking at my house, taking care of a house that I owned while I was away. And I guess a couple days after I had left for my deployment, somebody had broken into my house and just cleaned me out.
Really?
And the only, yeah, it was such a punch in the gut, like here I am in Iraq, and I'm notified that there's nothing I can do, literally nothing. Right. So I just have to think about my house that's been completely emptied with muddy footprints and glass all over the place, and I find out about that via email. It's the only way that they can tell me. So I'm feeling really crummy, and so I'm in a Black Hawk. We're going to this kind of remote forward operating position, kind of near the border of Iran, and we were going with a group to go play music for them, like top 40 rock sort of stuff, to give them a taste of home. And the whole time we're in the Black Hawk, and I'm thinking, like, dude, what a waste of taxpayer dollars. What am I doing here? Because some people think that the Air Force bands are a waste of taxpayer dollars, and I was starting to believe them. I'm thinking, like, how much do these Black Hawks cost? How much is the fuel? How much are we paying these officers, these pilots? How much for a battery powered gear? How much for my salary? All these things. Like, how much money is bringing us to this place where we're going to play for 20 people, where 5 of them are only going to care, that 25% of them are actually going to care, so I'm feeling worthless, and that's a bad feeling, to feel sure. Like, your purpose is not valuable, to feel like what you put your life into is not valuable. And so I had gone astray. I was feeling really, really bad. And so I'm on my way to, like, I'm in the Black Hawk, and I can remember where I was sitting, just thinking of my exit strategy. Like, after my first enlistment, I'm going to get out. I'll go back to school. I'll do this, that, and the other. I'm ready to get out. So anyways, we land, and I decided, even though I'm feeling really crummy, I'm I'm gonna, put on my uniform, be a professional, and go do noble work and do my best. And so we had a good show, and we strike down after. There was like 20 people there that weren't, guarding or on convoy, that were able to come listen, and some were apathetic and some cared. And so we're packing up afterwards, and we're really, because we were going to hot load out of there. I mean, there was no waiting, which people don't really picture a lot of military bandsmen being in that situation, but that really was our reality.
Sure.
And so we're waiting to get picked up, and this young Army guy, I don't remember his name, but I'll never forget his face. So he comes up to us, he kind of taps our drummer on the shoulder. He's like, "Hey, I really appreciated your show. Thank you so much." And it really meant a lot to me. And it turns out that, from talking to this kid, that he had just been extended. Like the light at the end of the tunnel was close, and then it just got pushed far away.
Sure, I know that. I know that. Yeah.
And the poor guy, I mean, he just looked beat up. And he was like, "You know what, guys, I really mean it. I can't thank you enough. I don't know how I was going to make it through the week." I'm like, "Oh, right on. Glad that you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming." And he goes, "No, you don't understand. I wasn't planning on making it through the week."
Wow.
So like the guy was in this situation, and the light at the end of the tunnel had blinked out for this guy, and he was planning on taking his own life. And he confessed that to us. And he said, by us coming and playing a Journey medley for him and a couple other tunes, it
Sure.
reminded him that there was a home to go home to. It gave him a taste of home. And
Well,
so instantly,
it builds the morale. It keeps his morale up now,
absolutely. And so instantly my worldview just blew up. And I'm thinking, like, dude, we literally just could have saved this guy's life. And what, all those feelings of, taxpayer dollars and whatnot, like, we weren't a waste. What price do you put on that guy's life? And
that was the thought that I had when you were talking about that, because the bottom line is, yeah, there is a monetary price to send the helicopter out there, get you guys and salaries, but the human expense for morale, getting those troops, getting those soldiers, getting those Marines, getting whoever and whatever out there onto the battlefield, or doing what they're supposed to do, having build them up, that's there's no price on that. That's priceless, to help motivate and continue on the mission or continue on the funk, it might be. So
and I realized it at that moment, and I'm thinking, like, I was telling myself, man, you should be ashamed of yourself for doubting it for even a second. I mean, you know that what you're doing is noble work that supports people. Like, there are haters everywhere. Just keep doing what you know is right. And look, on a day that you thought that you were worthless, you decided to go out and be a professional. And look, you might have saved the dude's life. And not just what price do you put on his life, but what price do you put on his potential impact in his community for the rest of his life, and his family and his kids. And so I came home from that deployment. So going back to your original question, like, thinking, like, 100% you rah Air Force, I finally was able to see in so many ways through my various experiences on deployment the firsthand value and impact of the non-kinetic weaponry. And I was like, you know what, I need to pay this forward. I'm going to go be an instructor. So I was actually one of the rare few that volunteered to be an MTI in the time after all of the sexual assault scandals that rocked BMT, if you recall, in like 2004 through 2008, or that kind of time frame. So there were a few people that were volunteering. They were actually non-voling a ton of people for MTI duty, and nobody that actually really were excited about going, because the climate had changed so much, and the MTIs were under such scrutiny because of all the shenanigans that had gone on by some, by a small handful of dirtbags that really sullied our name and ruined a lot of things for a lot of people. So I was one of the few people that actually volunteered to come in as part of the cleanup crew, because I was like, dude, I'm up for the challenge. I want to do this. So that's what brought me to be an instructor. And I mean, it was an unbelievable learning experience for me, and it was transcendent professionally.
That's outstanding. Yeah, I remember being in Camp Lejeune down in North Carolina and getting
Hmm.
ready for my first deployment. And my unit in general and a couple buddies, we were like, man, this is really happening. And you're young and you're gung ho, but now is the time, it's going to happen. So you go from being, this, rah, rah, I'm ready to go to where it's actually now happening. And then you're second guessing yourself.
Hmm.
And I remember them bringing Three Doors Down in their highlight 2002,
Oh,
2003.
no way.
They brought him in for a meet and greet and they played a live concert before he left. And I remember being in line Three Doors Down to meet the band. And I remember the line seemed like it stretched for days. I was like, there's no way these guys are going to still be here and want to shake my hand by the time I get up there and then go play a concert. There's just no way.
Right, right.
They literally sat there and shook every one of us, every one of our hands before they actually got
Oh, man,
and played their concert. So
that is cool.
when you're telling a story about playing Journey and the medley and things like that, it resonates because when I remember now I'm overseas and now we put Three Doors Down on and that was motivation, maybe,
You bet. You
I
bet.
mean, I'm a fan of Three Doors Down prior to that, obviously, but I hear it now 10, 12 years, 15, 16 years later. And it takes me back to it motivates me. It gets me excited. And most people wouldn't say Three Doors Down gets them motivated in 20. And that's no dig. That's just the reality of kind of like, longevity and rock and all that.
Right, 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 right.
But that brings me back to good, solid, good state of mind. So, yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you were able to observe that, take that in, and even given what you were going through, personally, recognize
Yeah.
that somebody else's problems might be a little bit more, and you took salvation and possibly saving that man, his life, and that's very 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 commendable for you to have done that and your colleagues to do that when you guys played. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we felt. I mean, we felt good about it, and I feel bad for ever having doubted it because I knew, my whole life being a musician and studying and touring and playing, I knew that there was a healing power to music. I knew it. It's just there's no love lost for the military bands, especially within the military community, and especially within the veteran community. They just see it as a frivolous expense, even though, honestly, the whole Air Force band program annually costs less than one cruise missile does. And
Wow.
if they want to get upset over wasteful spending, let's talk about $80 spent on one screw,
Right,
to fix
right.
one part of, or like $15,000 for a trailer that they can, purchase at lowest for $399. That's stuff to be upset about. Air Force bands, actually, I mean, they support the troops and they support, they help to foster military support throughout our community, and they render honor to our veterans.
Sure.
There is a value in that, and that I've seen firsthand. It's hard for, I mean, I'm not hating on the haters. They don't get it. So
Well,
I guess it's important.
yeah, well, it's just like your color guard and your honor guards and things like that. They're
Hmm.
across all
Hmm.
branches too. I mean, you don't really, I'm in the honor guard or I'm in the color guard, whatever it might be called. Even in, police departments, fire departments, people say, oh, well,
Right.
that is that. But, when there's, ceremonies and funerals and things like that, that brings that community, that brings that function together. Um, is either closure because this is
Hmm.
the symbolic gesture or it brings really a nice time. I mean, I remember when I was young, I saw them come out with the Marine Corps band and the color guard for my grandfather who was a Korean War vet, and I
Oh, right on.
and so I understand the importance of it. Maybe it's in the background to your infantry or other things, but at the end of the day, you need these things to keep and build morale. So they're
Yeah.
right there with you guys were out there, essentially on the front lines with everybody else, keeping the morale up. Without good morale, we don't know what
Yeah.
happens in combat, right? I mean, you're thinking about the girl overseas, or you're thinking about, in your case, something that happened and now you're cleaned out, or financial problems, and now you go off to battle,
Hmm.
and that's what you're thinking about, as opposed to being combat ready and or just everyday function ready, really. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, is staying motivated and kind of putting your head down and just keep moving forward. Right. So,
Right. Yeah,
uh,
totally.
now you were undergraduate with piano jazz, in the jazz. Is that correct?
Yeah. I was a Bachelor of the Arts in Music major with the, piano was my instrument. I played pretty much my whole life, and I was, obviously interested in the lucrative career of being a jazz pianist.
All right.
Yeah, that was my thing, and so I studied that, mostly jazz and commercial music, and then realized pretty quick that it was tough out there. It was really tough. I spent a couple years as a touring, professional musician. I worked for Carnival Cruise Lines for a while. I did some contracts with them, playing in their show band, which was a fun gig, but no way to live your life in the long term. It recorded on some CDs nobody's probably ever heard of, and it played some wallpaper gigs that basically background music, setting an atmosphere, and doing very little of I think what made me tick. And so I once the Air Force band opportunity came up, and it's an audition position. You have to audition before you sign up for the Air Force. You audition and you get a little card that says, like, this is your guaranteed job for when you join the Air Force, which is a really rare thing. And then you go through the enlisting process, you go through basic training and blah blah blah. But that was very attractive to me because my dad was a veteran. He was Army, Vietnam vet. He was armor, airborne. I mean, everything. He was hardcore, Bronze Star
Wow.
recipient. Yeah, so I had that connection, and I obviously wanted an opportunity to serve, but thought it was cool to use something that I was passionate about to serve. And so I auditioned and I made it, and didn't really look back. And it's weird how your life can take so many weird twists and turns that you would never have seen coming. Like, if you would have told me when I was 16 that I was going to join the military, I would have called you crazy. I mean, if you would have told me when I was an Air Force bandsman that I was going to go be an MTI, I'd have called you crazy.
Sure.
If you'd have told me that I was going to get out of the Air Force after being an MTI, get my master's degree while I was an MTI, and then go work in the nonprofit world, I'd have called you crazy. But it's amazing how those things turn out. And now I'm with J-Dog Junk Removal and Hauling, which is a veteran-owned and operated franchise. I'm the site manager, the district partner that runs southeastern Wisconsin operations for J-Dog. We do junk hauling, removal, recycling. 85% of the stuff that we touch, we keep out of a landfill through recycling or upcycling or resale. It's another one of those things. It's more than just junk hauling. We help people through difficult times. We help families transition their parents out of their homes they've been in for the last 60 years into elder care. We help them move and help them sort through the debris. Family members that are hoarders that pass away in their homes, we help who they leave behind sort through the debris. There's some emotional, sensitive situations that we deal with, or we help somebody who's disabled, get a fridge out of the basement.
Right.
And at the same time, we empower veterans with meaningful employment. We pay them living wages right off the bat and give them opportunities to advance as fast as they want to prove that they're ready to show up on time and lead the people they're around.
That's outstanding.
And
That's outstanding.
it's super exciting for me, because I didn't know J-Dog existed until I started becoming kind of more vocal and present in the veteran transition community. And then I find out there's one in my backyard, and the owner and founder is a guy named Andy Wines, who's just a visionary entrepreneur. He's our celebrity. I mean, he's been in Forbes and the top veteran entrepreneur of the year sort of thing. And I ran into him at the right time, met him through LinkedIn. We met in person, and the rest is history. But it's I guess the moral is, there's so many people that are taught when they're 14, 15, 16 years old, like, you have to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life, go to college, do that job until you die, and have family and kids, and here's your linear path. But, like, that's insane. And there's there's so few people that actually, I mean, if you follow a linear path and that's like super exciting for you, then good on you. But the reality is for most people that their career progression takes twists and turns and it snakes left and right and goes all over the place. And that's okay. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's in an upward trajectory, it doesn't matter what direction you're going. You're going to learn from every single random interdisciplinary endeavor that you take on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I had a similar kind of like that, but as far as linear, I thought I was going to do A, then maybe B, and I ended up doing E and F. That's kind of where I've been. This podcast,
Yeah, right on.
This
Yeah.
is not, this was not something I ever envisioned myself to do this. But it's kind of a rant one day, just kind of throwing it out there, and then it's kind of stuck. So I'm making it a priority to really do this and give 100% because apparently it's needed. I thought I was, kind of like I said, alone with the whole, I don't know what to do after this. I thought I was in the minority of that, mentality.
Right.
And apparently I'm in the majority. Apparently a lot of people don't have that resource. So this is why I've committed myself 120% sleepless nights during my, my 9 to 5 as well, just to reach out to people like yourself and others that have similar backgrounds or different backgrounds, different perspectives, and different resources. But as far as J-Dog junk removal, we see that all over here on the East Coast. I mean, I live in PA.
Oh, yeah?
And yeah, it's out here in PA. It's out here, New Jersey, and I've seen it as far up as Delaware.
Oh, yeah, it is out there. It's I think it's the founding franchise is in Pennsylvania.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That's
and it's hard. It's hard to miss. I mean, all of our stuff is. I mean, they're very deliberate with their branding. It's very loud, and by design. If you see one of the trucks, you can't miss it. I mean, it's camouflage. It's got a big bulldog on the side, and it definitely stands out against a kind of a plain 2 men in a truck or a 1-800 junk truck. It definitely stands out. So if you see one, you'll know it.
Oh yeah, well I appreciate it for a number of reasons. The bulldog represents the Marine Corps for me, so that automatically grabs my attention.
There you go.
Two, it's to your settlement, it's veteran owned, and you're getting veterans. And how would a vet out in your area or any area for that matter that was interested in a career with J-Dog, how would they go about that? Is there a website that they can plug in? Is there a number they can call? How do they go about finding you guys and finding out a little bit more information?
So I actually get my employees through a variety of sources, and just recently I got an employee. Somebody had reached out through they just Googled J-Dog, so they went to like the corporate national site and had sent them an email inquiring about a position, and it was forwarded to us. So I'd imagine that happens quite a bit, and that's definitely a viable route to go. If you're looking in southeastern Wisconsin, you can Google J-Dog Menominee Falls. If you're from southeastern Wisconsin, you'll know exactly how to spell that and where that is. If not, then don't worry about it. We also we're all over the place. We're nationwide. I also get employees through veteran staffing networks quite a bit. And so basically, I'm hiring right now. I could hire 2 to 3 more entry level junk removal specialists, and the good thing about that is it's an entry level manual labor gig, but we pay people a living wage.
That's awesome.
Not just not minimum wage, a living wage, and then as fast as, like I said earlier, as fast as you want to learn stuff and show people that you're dedicated to what's going on, that's as fast as you can promote. If you work your butt off, in 6 months you can be a crew chief, and another 6 months you can be a team leader. And then, in a year, you could be fleet commander, you could be salaried. Those opportunities are there. And some people use it as a stepping stone. They just got out of the service and they're looking for a gig, and they work for J-Dog for a while. They become part of the family. We help them progress professionally, and we connect them with resources that are important to them. And then if they end up going in a different direction, that's fine too. Like we are all about supporting veterans in their upward mobility, whether it's with us or without us.
That's outstanding, because a lot of times, when you get out of the military, you have a mindset. Some people might have the mindset of somebody owes me something because I served. And then other people will say, well, now I'm lost. What do I do?
Right.
And I fell into what do I do with an expectation to be fair and honest. I had an expectation that I could just walk in, say, hey, I served our country. What do you got for me? And a lot of people don't look for the infantryman, or the security forces guy like myself. They don't look for that too often. So,
Well,
that's
if
kind
it's anything like they tell you how it's going to be in your federally mandated transition assistance class, you'll basically hop out, and on your first day as a civilian, somebody will offer you a $75,000 a year salaried position with benefits, and then you just kind of ride off into the sunset, right?
yeah, that's what they tell you, right? That's how they pitched it to me.
Yeah.
And I guess you got the same pitch.
Oh my goodness. And that was a rude awakening for me. I mean, my first, and granted, I was working in the nonprofit world, but here I was coming out having 8 years of military experience, and 4 of which were in public affairs, and 4 of which were at Air Education and Training Command.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a master's degree, and I'm looking for opportunities that I can use to provide for my family. And my first job that I got out of the Air Force was like 36,000 salaried, so I'm exempt from overtime, and they just worked me into the ground, nights, weekends, weird stuff, 50, 60 hours. And it's like half of what I was getting paid as a staff sergeant if you take healthcare into account, like half. So that was a rude awakening for me. That's a rude awakening for a lot of people, that people appreciate your service. Everybody appreciates your service. Nobody's going to say screw the troops. Nobody, no employer is going to say like, oh, you served, well, that's a check mark against you. Nobody's going to say that. So they're going to say thanks for your service, and they appreciate your service. But there's a huge difference between appreciating the fact that you served and appreciating what you bring to the table as a veteran, the skills that you have by virtue of your service.
100%.
The things that you bring, the tangibles, the intangibles, the leadership skills, the adaptability, the resiliency, you name it. They don't understand it. And to the point where they wouldn't even look at my resume. They'd see veteran and they'd say, thanks for your service, but you don't fit here.
Right.
And they'd be like, well, this is a public affairs job, but I have public affairs operations management experience. And they're like, well, I just don't see how it translates. Like they don't even listen. There's a veteran prejudice in hiring in the civilian workforce, and that was a rude awakening for me. And that was part of the reason why I was like, dude, I got to launch this site, because people have no idea what's coming, especially in TAP, hearing like, well, your skill set is equivalent to a $60,000 a year job. Okay, what they don't tell you is that those jobs aren't there, not for you, not yet, because you got to pay your dues all over again.
All over from ground up, correct. And that's what I'm interested in. And like I said, I read a lot of your articles on the postmilitarypro.com website. But the one that really stuck out to me because of the military ink, getting some tattoos, having that whole, I was that's my culture. I'm telling a story on my body, so to speak. And I'm proud of it. And
Absolutely.
I don't ever think, I mean, I don't have anything on my neck or my fingers or my hands or anything like that. But I got almost a full sleeve at this point in life and whatnot, with different things about my life and just kind of my journey. But I do find myself even now, I mean, in the career that I'm in, I wear long sleeves more than I probably need to, but that's just out of respect for professionalism. That I mean, as tattoos are growing in more popularity, it's becoming more and more commonplace. But again, it's like the beard, right? So I have a full beard at this point. And I've gotten a job in an interview with a beard, but many places they want to see the baby face. They want to see the shave. They want to see all that. But telling a man he has to shave kind of goes against the whole, growing a beard, right? I mean, growing a beard's kind of like that masculine thing, right? So to discriminate on a tattoo, and obviously tattoos are subjective, right? So if you have something that maybe you shouldn't have on you, or maybe is offensive, well, maybe you need to go find a different line of work, or maybe you need to have conversations with yourself about why you got that kind of tattoo. But you know what I mean? But tasteful tattoos that tell a story or something that's important to you, discrimination, I'm sure, is there, right? I mean, they see you sitting there, you got a colorful tattoo, or you got this, to your point, if it's military, they'll say, "Oh, he was in the military," and they won't hold it against you, but then they will hold it against you. So,
Yep, yep.
for me, I think things are changing when it comes to the beard. I mean, for God's sake, a man bun, whatever that is, a man's bun. Man, am I saying that right? That was popular
Man
for about
bun?
man bun. That was popular for about 4 days. Culturally, that was an accepted thing for a man to do. Now, if you have a man bun, that's fine. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just suggesting that discriminating someone because they have a tattoo that's of course in taste, or a beard, um, that's a little bit silly in 2018 going in 2019. That's just my thought. I don't, that's just where I'm at with that.
Well, I agree completely, and I'm glad to see kind of there being a shift in the polarity, and I honestly think this is going to sound really insensitive, but I think as the baby boomer generation starts to fade off into the land of not being alive anymore, I'm trying to be sensitive. As soon as the baby boomers are gone, I think the generations that kind of bridge the gaps post boomer generation, and this is broadly speaking because my parents are boomers and they're totally cool with tattoos. Okay, so
Sure.
don't misinterpret. But generally speaking, I think that there are a lot of kind of archaic social norms and ideas about social norms, that were born out of this idea of a perfect society in the 1950s that are just clinging on for dear life. And I think their final last great cry is with the baby boomer generation. So if you notice some of the statistics from that article, where there are certain generations of people, certain age groups, and their approval with, I can't remember the exact statistic that's in there, but their acceptance of tattoos in a workplace, it just drops off drastically with that age group, like by a huge margin. So I think as our CEOs and end up becoming our Gen Xers, and then sooner CEOs are going to be millennials, because really the millennial generation is anybody in the workplace under 40 right now, is essentially what that means. So as the millennials end up becoming our CEOs and our white collar CEOs, kind of begrudgingly against their hopes and dreams to be indie startup superheroes, like I think that, and again I'm speaking in generality, so I'm trying to be quippy, so please, people, if you're listening, don't be don't be offended, but I think as that happens, those ideas about body modification, tattoos, piercings, about growing a beard, about having a man bun, having long hair, having no hair, and any of the ideas of professionalism associated with that aesthetic, I think will gradually fade away. I hope it will. It seems like it is. The statistics are at least alluding to that.
Yeah, I mean, a tattoo, a beard, man bun, the color shade of makeup you might be wearing, lipstick,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't tell the story of who you are and what you actually bring to the table as a person and as a professional.
Absolutely.
So to
Yep.
discriminate on something like that, again, to me is always been bothersome. But again, I am technically a millennial because I'm under 40 in the workforce now. So I kind of,
Me too. I'm a geriatric millennial. I'm technically a zennial, that new generation they've created.
sure. Yeah,
Whatever. I'm an old millennial. I kind of can't relate to young millennials, but
yeah, it's rough. It is rough at times, but again, to your point, I mean, if they're going to be the ones that bridge, then I can relate on that point. I'm sure I have other points I can relate to them as well.
Oh, dude, I have no problem with millennials. A lot of people hate on the millennials as a generation, but I mean, obviously, me just barely being one. But aside from that, I have no problem with millennials. They get a bad rap, mostly from the baby boomers. I think I got more issues with the baby boomers than I do with the millennials or the Gen Xers. That's for sure.
Well, the thing is, the millennials are trying to bring a difference of opinion on not only the workforce, but life in general and how we live our life. And some things maybe I agree, some things maybe I don't, maybe some things I have no.
Right.
But they're doing something, and that to me is kind of the what differentiates a millennial, maybe a baby boomer. Baby boomers kind of set their ways, right? They have a certain way of doing things. They, like you said, they're running a business now. They've been running it this way for however long. They're going about their life this way. This is what they want to do, and that's it. Millennials are trying to become startups, and they're trying to they're into the technology now. They're trying to have different approaches to talking to people. Hence the social media blow up in the last 5-10 years. Everything is social media. So this is kind of the thing that differentiates, and I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just hard for people, and like you said, our generation is kind of in that. We understand what the baby boomers are doing, but we also understand what the millennials are trying to do, right? So we're kind of in that gray area, trying to figure it out as well. That's kind of where I'm at with that aspect. But again, I'm a big fan of respecting everybody's opinions and kind of where they're coming from, and having those open dialogue, as long as it's productive dialogue. And whether I personally agree one way or the other is irrelevant. It's just about having that open dialogue, having that communication, and not excluding anybody for any certain thing, whether it's whatever it might be that one might be excluded. I don't think there's a place for that in our life, in our society. Going into 2019, I just really don't feel that is. So I agree with you.
I agree with you completely. It's funny how much veterans in particular are pegged as it's by older generations. They think that all veterans are like them, and they're kind of this homogenous, inflexible, think one way and one thing, and typically they assume we're exceptionally conservative, both politically and socially, and some are totally.
Sure.
But the assumption that the military folks all think the same and are inflexible kind of is, it's offensive, but it also kind of ignores the fact that our veterans are Gen Xers, and our veterans are millennials. We have millennial veterans in the workforce right now. I am one of them. You're one of them. And kind of a caveat, part of being a millennial is having that flexibility. Actually, so did you read the article that I wrote on Post Military Pro, that what veterans really think about Nike and Colin Kaepernick?
Correct. Yes.
Did you read that?
I'm a 49er drawn to that as well. Don't hold the 49ers against me, but yeah, I because I think he should still be in the league and playing for the 49ers.
Right.
But I'll digress.
Oh, he's a great player. Yeah.
Considering what they have out there, making the kind of money. One of them played last night, and you're telling me that guy is better than Kaepernick, and he got all that money.
Yeah, you can't. There are 10 NFL teams that would have him as their starting quarterback right now.
Yep.
Absolutely. But the point of the article that I wrote, it's such a grab line. People read like what veterans really think about Colin Kaepernick and Nike. It's like a blatant grab line, and I don't feel guilty about it at all. But they get them into the article, and basically the whole premise of this article is it draws them in, and then it says, here's what veterans think about Colin Kaepernick. They think a wide variety of things because we're all different people with different opinions that everybody should respect. So stop thinking that we're all some homogenous hive mind. Like we're all individuals and we all have different opinions. So stop trying to put us in a box.
Well, it's politics too, right? Politics.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the military as an overview, you think the military is one way. And
people assume it is. Yep.
And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Correct.
To your point, veterans came into whatever branch of service, having a background and an upbringing a certain way. And yes, they were involved, and hopefully they took a lot of culture and a lot of that away from them. So when they went back into Philadelphia, or Philadelphia's a melting pot, but that might be a bad example. But when they went back to Newport News, Virginia, where I'm originally from, or out in southern Wisconsin, or out in Texas, or somewhere in the Midwest, or somewhere where they don't have a lot of influences of different cultures and stuff, they take that back with them, and now they can hopefully make rational decisions about people, and not just what might have been said about it, through their upbringing. And hopefully that's what veterans do when they get home and they get out there. But there's this misconception that veterans vote one way at the voting polls, and I just don't find that to be the case. And
I think a lot of people that make assumptions about veterans, either political or social leanings would be very, very surprised with the statistics behind it, one way or another. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a lot of people don't realize, especially non-veterans, they don't realize that one of the the main things that the American military derives its strength from is our diversity. It's one of the most diverse corporate entities that there is in the United States. I mean, you can't find one business that's as diverse as the American military, and that's where we get a lot of our strength from. And from diversity comes kind of a worldly education and learning about difference of opinion and the stuff behind that. Yeah, somebody's going to grow up, hearing one thing their whole life, whether it's to the left or to the right or whatever. They're obviously going to believe those things because they're a product of their environment. But then they get into a situation like the military and they meet people that think differently, and they are different, and they believe different, and they're taught through our numerous military trainings, our kind of diversity and inclusion and how to listen to people, and a lot of trainings that people don't realize we have in the military. And all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, my worldview was incomplete before. And people learn quite a bit in the military about, they're able to formulate real opinions for themselves, I think, for the first time, a lot of folks.
Yeah, and if it only could be that easy, outside of the military, everybody would have that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
On just, doing for our neighbors, taking care of one another. Don't worry about politics, what side of the fence you're on, what color skin you are, what religion you practice, what your sex is, what your sexual preferences, all that stuff that unfortunately is everyday topic anymore, amongst the hate and violence that goes on within our country. If they would just take that, that knowledge and that, just having that day-to-day life like you did in the military, where you're exposed, that exposure to these things, man, we would have maybe having some different conversations in this country right now. People would just kind of relax, take a breath here, and just say, okay, what's really important for me and my family, and let everything else just kind of play itself out.
I hear you completely, and my thoughts are with you, obviously, being in the greater Philadelphia area, which if I'm not mistaken, that's where, or Pittsburgh, right?
Pittsburgh, a little farther north from where we were.
Farther north, but in your same neck of the woods, having experienced that unspeakable tragedy that you guys went through over there, I bet that whole region's, has a heavy heart today, and
senseless. It's just senseless.
Yeah. Oh, completely senseless. And I think, a lot of these opinions that become so heated to the point where somebody feels like they just can't explode, they can't take it anymore, and they have to act on some, insane premonition. I think it just comes like our politics have become a contact sport, a spectacle. Like I'm a Packers fan, and I won't have the same opinion about sports as a Bears fan.
Right.
Never.
Right.
To the point where I think the Packers are perfect no matter what they do, and they think the Bears are perfect no matter what they do, and they're never going to agree with us. They're never going to meet halfway. They never want a tie because everybody loses in a tie.
Right.
That's our American politics. Meeting halfway, is a sign of weakness, and we become so polarized that the truth that is hovering in the gray area in between, and nobody will even recognize that it's there. It's sickening, and so we get more and more polarized and more heated, and more and more misinformed, and more apt to believe misinformation without researching it on our own, and then we get things like what's happened in this last week. It's insane what we're seeing. It is unsettling. It's insane. And Martin Luther King said that the arc of history is long. I'm butchering the quote, like the curve of history, the arc of history is long, but in a progressive direction, something along those lines. Please find out what that quote actually is and look it up, because I didn't do it justice. But hopefully, what we're witnessing now is an extinction burst, is a last kind of great cry of one generation or one ideology, and moving towards a more accepting and collaborative place. That's my opinion. I feel I'm trying to be an optimist. 10 years from now, the historians will be looking back on this period in our history and saying, like, what on earth happened? They'll be studying this chunk of history for centuries, and hopefully we'll be studying it, with a new set of eyes and from a much better and more collaborative, positive place.
I 100% agree, and hopefully that is the the dialogue for us here moving forward, and for the next generation below us, that this is all kind of like that learning curve to what not to do to one another as humans, and just figure this mess out now before it gets. I mean, I don't know if it gets any worse than this. I mean, I really don't, but hopefully we can use this as a learning endeavor here, and come together as a united people instead of all this bias and stuff. And I think hopefully, kind of what we were kind of speaking on with the millennials coming through and going to be our CEOs, they're going to be running our country one day. Maybe they are the ones that have this knowledge, or living through it now, going, well, this doesn't make sense, or explain to me why I'm supposed to believe this when I don't believe it. These are the people. This is the generation that's asking questions, and maybe, just maybe, they're going to be noticed once they get into these power roles, and they'll be able to change for the good, and unite everyone, no matter what color button you push at the polls, no matter what you believe in. And hopefully they are the ones that will utilize, kind of this whole deal and benefit this country. So that is my hope. And hopefully,
you and me both, man.
So, well, Adam, it was definitely a pleasure speaking to you today, sir. I definitely appreciate your time.
So much.
If anybody needs resources transitioning out, or just want to have some good literature, I would absolutely recommend postmilitarypro.com. I read an article every so often. I would definitely recommend the Military Inc. I think there's some valuable information on that particular one, just when you're transitioning out. And then, if you're looking for a career endeavor, leaving the military, or you've already been out for a little bit, and you just don't have a clue what you want to do, maybe reach out to that J-Dog Junk. What is it? JDogJunkRemoval.com?
J-Dog Junk Removal and Hauling. I'd say just Google it. I don't know the web address off the top of my head, but.
And then, reach out to them and let them know that you're interested in a career, and, take it from there. Any feedback on this here, feel free to reach out. Again, Adam, I definitely appreciate your time, educating me and having this open dialogue. And, anytime you're interested in talking again, we'll be more than open to having you.
Right on. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great chatting with you. And I'm so glad you reached out, man. LinkedIn is such a powerful platform that can open doors. I can't speak highly enough about the way that it can kind of bridge some people and forge some connections. That's how you and I connected, and I can't thank you enough for reaching out, and happy to chat any old time.
Very good. Appreciate it. Anybody missed this episode, please feel free to reach us, listen to it. Again, you can find us on Spotify, Google, Anchor. We are going to be posting this here shortly if you didn't catch the live version of this deal. And then, of course, check out Adam and his staff over at J-Dog Junk and postmilitarypro.com. Adam, you take care of yourself, sir, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.